Hey everyone, welcome to Genre Exposure, a film podcast. Join us as we explore the wide world of cinema, broadening our horizons one movie at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin, and as usual, I'm here with Michael.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hi.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Great.
Not too bad.
How are you, Dustin?
I'm excited to talk about this movie.
Oh, yeah?
We got other things to talk about first.
I am.
So hold your excitement.
Are they movie related?
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I might talk about dinner.
Right, well, let's warm up first with a little bit of what we've been watching recently.
Fair enough.
That's a great idea.
It's a cinema podcast. We should talk about that, not my dinner.
Probably. Save that for cuisine exposure.
Ooh, an offshoot. Jason, what'd you watch?
Well, of note recently, I have watched two films, both with the same title.
Ooh.
Queen of Black Magic.
Interesting.
I actually just heard about this on a podcast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes. I actually didn't know much about this movie. I remember hearing the title. A remake just hit Shudder.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was made just last year.
Oh, yeah, this is the Indonesian one, right?
Right,
Yep.
exactly.
Yeah, I'm actually
Kind of
super
the
excited
same
to-
story as Satan's Slaves.
I'm super excited to hear your take on this because I've been wanting to watch it.
Okay. Yeah, so I went back and watched the original because I'd never seen it. And then I watched the remake the next night. I recommend both of them. I think the original is better.
Elitist.
Well, they're really... It's almost really an in-name-only remake. That and the whole connection with black magic and vengeance. Otherwise, the stories are completely
Those are
different.
pretty broad topics. So.
Right, exactly.
So kind of a thematic remake.
Precisely. And the original deals with a woman who is scorned by her lover and is compelled to turn to black magic to get revenge.
Naturally.
Classic.
Naturally.
As
That's why,
you do.
Listeners, you do not piss off ladies. They'll go to black magic.
That's right. And it's pretty inventive. I mean, it's obviously a low budget, but the effects are pretty good and some actually pretty surprisingly good special effects. Some good gore scenes, some interesting characters, and also a really interesting, at least to Western audiences, use of Islamic beliefs in the movie, which is pretty different.
Yeah, you don't really see that much.
No. So that was cool and refreshing, and that was an element that I thought was lacking from the remake, which was well made, well acted. It just felt a little too modern, a little bit like almost every Asian film of the past 15 or 20 years.
Okay.
But it's still worth watching. It has some good effects, a little too much CG, of course, like every movie these days.
That's unfortunate because the tagline Shudder's kind of billing that through their marketing is about like all the special effects and the gore is so good and like the goriest movie you'll see this year.
Oh, well, that's just preposterous.
Kind of a thing.
Right. But I mean, there are some good gore shots, good actors, especially some of the children actors involved, which are, the children are heavily threatened in this movie, which you don't see often. And that's interesting. But, yeah, I mean, I would recommend both of them. The first one more so than the remake.
Cool.
And speaking of Satan's Slaves, isn't this remake of Queen of Black Magic? It's written by Joko Anwar, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Mm.
Cool. Dustin, what'd you watch?
Okay, I've been trying to delve in and expand my endless knowledge of Japanese cinema recently, as I tend to do.
Careful, guys. You might need to get your shots ready.
So, kind of one of my gray areas there is pink films. I've seen some. I know about some. I've just been trying to brush up that area a little bit.
Dustin, what are pink films?
That is a very good question. Let's go over that. So, yeah, this is going to take me a minute to get this right. Let me just cheat real
Off
quick.
the cuff, no. What are pink films?
So there were exploitation films that kind of gave rise in the 60s and the 70s in Japan and on. Over here, you'd almost lump them in with like, well, we had some 70s exploitation stuff here as well that really like pushed the envelope as far as like what you could show, the violence, being sexually explicit, stuff like that. A lot of pink films really pushed it into this sort of formula that they had, known for being like, you know, a sex scene every so many minutes, dealing with a lot of transgressive themes or ideas, high violence. They were very formulaic because they sold well. It was an easy way to turn some money around. But I think within that format, there's a lot of directors and casts that have done interesting things artistically through them.
Sure.
So I decided to check out from 1974, Zero Woman, Red Handcuffs, directed by Yukio Noda.
Interesting title.
Very interesting title. This is from Toei, who also made Female Prisoner Scorpion, which is a very popular pink film. Yeah.
I didn't realize that would be considered a pink film, but that's a good reference to make because somebody who might have seen that.
I think it's kind of borderline in a way.
I think an argument can be made.
Jason is sneering right now in his dismissive ways.
But you've probably heard of that if you know Quentin Tarantino at all. It's a film that he loves. He's referenced a bunch.
Yeah, that's pretty much where it pops up.
And so after the first Scorpion film, they kind of tried to keep cashing in on that style. And with Zero Woman, they went back to the source, the same mangaka who created the Scorpion manga, which they based the film off of. He'd also made this Zero Woman property. And it's about a female cop named Ray who kind of pushes things to the limits to get the job done, bring criminals down in any manner possible. The red handcuffs of the title is her titular weapon. It's a very extra long, almost rope-like length of red chain on a set of handcuffs that she will throw and tie people up with, choke them out. The edges are razor sharp. She'll slash people.
Whoa.
So people in this movie intentionally break the law in order to be apprehended by her, right?
Perhaps they would. She's played by Miki Sugimoto, who's super popular in the realm of pink films. She's known for starring in all the girl boss movies. There's a ton of those. I've not gotten through them all myself. She is just, gorgeous, very strong. Definitely sells the film if nothing else. But at the start of the film, she kind of goes too far. She kills a American diplomat.
Oh no!
In the course of bringing him down for some crimes. She gets thrown in jail. It's very Scorpion-esque at that point, where she's kind of like preyed upon by the other inmates who she's had a hand in arresting. Eventually, there's a rising politician. His daughter gets kind of kidnapped by this gang. And so they release Ray to go in undercover and kind of infiltrate them and get the woman out at any cost, as long as she kills all of the gang members and silences everything.
That sounds entertaining as hell.
Going a total Snake Plissken route on her.
Right. It's super fun. It's very stylish. There's some amazing gore effects. Right from the start, you know that Ray is just a complete badass, willing to do anything. She, the diplomat that she murders, she actually shoots him in the crotch until he drops.
Not cool, man. Not cool.
Well,
She's sinister, man. She goes for it. It is a hard watch, I think, if you're going to just be getting into this genre. There is a lot of rape that's going on behalf of the villains.
Oh, yeah. Trigger warning on that one.
For sure.
We should say.
And that's sort of the territory when you get into exploitation films.
And also, like most Japanese films, especially back then, this is one's fogged, right? Is that correct?
Well, the way they shoot it, you don't really see anything explicit enough that they had to fog it out.
Oh, okay. So they're obscuring things with objects, foreground, stuff like that.
The way they shot it.
Okay. And
it's for that reason, a lot of the cinematography was very interesting, the way they kind of shot around scenes or framed stuff.
Interesting.
But typical, bloodbath, people get cut, there's huge blood sprays.
Again, violence is fine, folks, but nudity, no.
Yeah, don't you show a boobie.
Where does that come from? I don't know. But in the end, she kind of gets in too deep, starts picking them off. Predictably, her handler tries to betray her, let her die, cover it all up.
They always do that.
But she's able to sort of turn the tables in the end.
It's nice. So you would recommend this?
Definitely, especially if you're kind of wanting to get into this genre of cinema and check out more. There's a bunch of sequels. I guess in the 90s, they revived it for their V-Cinema series, which is kind of the Japanese equivalent of direct-to-video.
Okay.
So there's maybe 7, 8 more of these things.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to try to seek them out and check them all.
Very cool. Report back later.
Yeah, so that's Zero Woman, Red Handcuffs.
Nice. How about you, Michael? Watch anything interesting?
I watched a stinker.
Oh, no.
I'm kind of bummed about it.
It happens.
This is, again, in my movie purge of the things that I owned that I...
Oh, you bought a stinker?
A long time ago, unknowingly. This was a Tokyo Shock release.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, really good company, really good releases. This one, not so much, though. So this was 1995, The Red Wolf, directed by Yuen Wu-ping. So, Yuen Wu-ping, awesome, fantastic.
action choreographer,
director as well. You'd probably know him if you're not into the realm of like Chinese martial arts films or action films. You probably know him most from The Matrix. He was action choreographer on The Matrix. Did a lot of
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah, Crouching Tiger as well.
Wow.
But if we're going for like, I don't know, action films ish, I'd say. So yeah, but Yuen Woo-ping, known pretty well in China for action choreography, as well as directing. This one kind of stars Kenny Ho, which Kenny Ho was not really like a huge draw so much for Chinese action cinema, but he was in, he was in this long-running Chinese TV show called, bear with me.
It's a strange name. Bear with me. Was it about a bear? Was he like Manimal? Did he change into a bear and attack people?
A bear.
That sounds awesome.
Thrilling radio.
I can't pronounce this because don't speak the language very well, but forgive me. It's Bao Jialing, which is kind of like a long-running TV show, I believe. Something I'd never seen.
Okay.
Kind of more regional. He did make some appearances, though, in some Jackie Chan films, so like Project A2, Eastern Condors, Police Story 2. So he's been around, and people have kind of seen him in some action films. But overall, this one was just stale, man. Like, story takes place on a cruise ship, and there is your female lead is a thief, and she's kind of going around the cruise ship and pickpocketing people and like stealing some things. Well, all of the sudden, there's a terrorist group that comes aboard the ship, starts to take over, and lo and behold, that ship has uranium in the belly of it.
Oh, no.
Yeah, why a cruise ship is carrying around uranium, I do not know.
They don't?
I don't think that's typical operating procedure.
Huh, okay.
I've not been on a cruise.
Yeah, I've never been on a cruise ship. Maybe they do.
Maybe they do. But your lead star, Kenny Ho, ends up, he's a cop that tried to stop a local crime and accidentally caused the robber that he's trying to subdue to shoot his girlfriend in the chest.
Oh, no.
Yes, I know. Things go horribly wrong. But overall, the action choreography is really just kind of bland. There's not a whole lot of stunts that are being pushed to really wow you in a movie that you would expect from Yuen Woo-ping. Kenny Ho just doesn't have the charisma that somebody like Jackie Chan does. Or Sammo Hung. You know, there's just kind of a lacking there. There's also a lot of American actors in it. And typically when that happens in Asian films, you get a very weird performance.
Do you think this was more of an import, like trying to sell to Western audiences more?
I think it probably was. Some of the themes kind of, centered around like an American action film theme.
Right.
So it just really didn't play well.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So I'm not going to recommend this to you if you're a fan of Hong Kong cinema. You'll know that I am based on last week's episode. But yeah, unfortunately, I can't really recommend this one unless you're just a completist.
Well, if this is your favorite film in the world, please write in genreexposure@gmail.com and tell us why Michael is wrong.
Tell me every reason why I'm wrong about this movie.
So it's no Under Siege, huh?
Man, there's some similar things going on with that plot line.
As you described the plot, that was where my mind
Oh, I know. The whole time I was watching it, I was like, I've seen this movie before. And there's no Steven Seagal in this movie. Or Tommy Lee Jones. So, yeah, sadly, a stinker that I watched.
No, they can all be winners.
Right, so let's get into it now. What are we talking about today, Michael?
Oh, I'm going to let Jason introduce his own movie.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I decided to show a film from 1977 called The Sorcerer.
Fantasy film, right?
Sure, you would think so by the name.
Magic, wizards, sorcerers.
That's the first imagery that's conjured in my mind. But alas, no. It's a William Friedkin movie, and it is about 4 men with various and nefarious backgrounds who have to leave their countries for different reasons. They wind up in a South American village that has deplorable living conditions. They're desperate to get out, but they don't have the money. So when the local oil company, a huge oil fire is started on one of their wells. So in order to put out the fire, they require a large amount of explosives to take away the oxygen and snuff out that larger fire. So these 4 protagonists are hired to drive trucks full of nitroglycerin across 200 miles of jungle terrain to put out the oil fire.
I'm not going to lie. When you first told us about this movie and you told me the synopsis, I was like, meh.
Really?
I had the same reaction.
It's just kind of a weird premise for a film.
Sure.
And you're like, okay, well, it's a truck full of nitroglycerin. They're going to drive across the country. Cool. Okay.
You want to say, like, how interesting can it be to watch people drive 200 miles?
Yeah. I mean, like, what kind of drama are you going to be able to pull out of that? Like, I don't know. I was initially pretty underwhelmed when you talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I watched it, I was not at all underwhelmed.
Oh, awesome.
So let's get this right off the top. It's based on a novel by Georges Arnaud, The Wages of Fear, that came out in 1950. There was a prior film adaptation by Clouseau in 1953, and I believe that was just called The Wages of Fear.
Correct. Also a fantastic movie in its own right.
Which I have not seen. So that might have, depending on if you've seen this movie or not.
Well, I saw Sorcerer first before I saw Wages of Fear.
Oh, interesting.
So.
Okay, cool.
I read the book in college, but I've actually never seen the Clouseau film. I want to go back now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well worth watching.
And so I guess since we are genre exposure off of the top, what genre is this movie, Jason?
Well, on the surface, you would call it perhaps a thriller suspense, but it's actually part of a subgenre also. It's a prime example of New Hollywood. Or the American New Wave. It's a bunch of films came out in the late 60s, the early 80s that were about young directors. These directors were given pretty much complete control of the movies as opposed to the studios calling the shots. So you're talking about directors like Friedkin, like Francis Ford Coppola, like Martin Scorsese,
Dennis
De Palma. Exactly. Easy Rider is one of the prime examples of the early
that's the
New
one
Hollywood.
film I think of for that.
Yeah, The Wild Bunch, Bonnie and Clyde, movies like that. George Lucas, Steven Spielberg came out of this group.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Friedkin also has the reputation of being a highly demanding and specific director. Which was kind of
an understatement. I think that's an understatement.
Yeah. But that was kind of a trademark of the American New Wave. And it certainly shows in this movie, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess let's just jump right into it.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think of like ways that I can build this up for you, but there's really no way to build this up. The way this film is shot, it's not like, I mean, looking at the time frame when this was released, this felt like kind of a guerrilla style shooting. You know, like there's a lot of handhelds going on. There's a lot of footage that Friedkin even said in one of his own writings that he wanted it to be kind of a documentary feel.
Right.
It definitely hits that mark.
That he wants it to feel like you're watching a documentary. And there are times where you do, and it feels very real. It's very in your face. Real-time things happening. But then he'll take those scenes, and then when we start getting our characters into the jungle, you'll get these absolutely gorgeous, like, overhead crane shots and these, sweeping epic action sequences going on. So there's like a blend of all sorts of kind of guerrilla-style filmmaking with Hollywood cinema-style filmmaking.
For sure.
That's kind of built into that. And it's a beautifully shot movie.
Oh yeah, and to me, almost when I talk about like a film like this, it's not there, so you can't call it that. But I almost want to call it a war movie. That's sort of the tone.
It has that tone. It definitely has that tone. Well, interestingly, so Friedkin, some people considered, it's Coppola, right? That did Apocalypse Now.
Correct.
Okay. some people consider Coppola to be like Friedkin's competitor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Friedkin ever really came out and said that he was the competitor, but Coppola went to make Apocalypse Now,
Mm-hmm.
and around the same time, Friedkin went to South America to make Sorcerer. So you've got kind of competing similar geography going on. So, yeah, I think you're totally right to say this kind of feels like a war movie.
And definitely, with Apocalypse Now, there's almost a tonal echo, I would say, between these two films.
Yeah, definitely.
You could pair them up, and I think you'd get something out of it.
Definitely.
Together.
As far as kind of cast goes, Jason, do you want to break down kind of some of the names people might know from this film?
Sure. It was largely a cast of unknowns, at least certainly to American audiences. The biggest A-list would be Roy Scheider.
Yeah.
Who had worked previously with Friedkin before on The French Connection, also a great movie. Of course, he was riding high off of Jaws after this, so he was no stranger to hard shoots in adverse environments. But he plays a character called Scanlon, who is a driver for a mafia. And his group hits a church at the beginning of the movie. There's a lottery in the church, and they rob the priests of this lottery. Things go south. He gets hurt. There's a hit put on him. He has to get out of there.
Now, let's break it down. There's a little bit more to that church robbery, though.
You're right, yes.
We've got some debate between us, I think, about that church robbery and kind of the tone of the film a little bit.
So we've purposefully not discussed this film very much. But okay, so I'm going to try to set the scene for you a little bit. During this lottery, there is a wedding happening where the priest is marrying a couple, and the bride clearly has been abused.
Sure. Yeah, there's a close-up. She has a big shiner on her eye.
Got a big shiner. Yep. She has some scratches on her face and stuff, and you totally get the impression that it's from this jackass that she's marrying.
That's the impression.
That's doing this. Well, as you kind of come to realize that this is a church that's pretty much heavily run by the mob.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not technically stealing the church's money. They're stealing the mafia's money. So it kind of looks like an embezzlement operation more than anything. Like maybe they're embezzling money through this church. I don't know.
There's probably some shady goings on here.
I'm reading a lot into that, but I didn't fully buy that Scanlon is the baddest dude around for robbing this church. You know?
He even tells his friend later on he never carries a gun. He's the driver.
But I mean, two wrongs don't really make a right.
No.
This is true. And
I think that's kind of the hook you're supposed to get for the film is these are four people that each in their own way have done something reprehensible, and they've now fled from that.
Right.
And they've become stuck in this other life.
And I think that's the point of the film, too, is that we're supposed to try to side with these guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're supposed to see them as human beings and not completely attached to the crimes or the wrongdoings that they've committed.
And I think that's what's interesting, because in the book, when it begins, it just starts with them already in South America there, everything's set up, and you kind of piece together their backstory. But where he starts this film with these little vignettes, and we kind of see each of them, what they did, them at their worst, basically, and why they had to flee.
Right.
It sets up a thing where as the film goes, you really start to empathize with them more and more as you see them going through their struggles, now that you know where they've been from.
And briefly, the other characters introduced are a character by the name of Nilo, played by Francisco Rabal. He has a very quick part. This is the first segment, and he's a hitman. That's all you know about him. That's all you need to know. Yeah. He shows up and kills a guy in cold blood and calmly walks away. Bruno Cremer plays Victor Manzan. He is a Frenchman who is indicted for embezzlement.
Right.
He swindled millions of francs from his company. His brother-in-law, who was involved in this, kills himself. He's about to go to jail. No way out. He flees the country. And the other character is Kassim, played by Amadou. He is a Palestinian, and he is involved in a bombing in Jerusalem at the beginning, and his group is found out, and he obviously has to get out of Dodge as quickly as possible.
And of his group, he's one of the few that made it out.
Yeah, he's the only one that we see make it out.
Yeah, the others are either killed in the apprehension or apprehended.
Right.
So, yeah, he's the only one that makes it out of this.
So we've got 4 characters of somewhat dubious backgrounds who wind up in this godforsaken village in Latin America. It's squalid. The conditions are terrible. Roy Scheider wakes up in a room full of dozens of other men sharing the same space, and you can almost smell the sweat and blood and various other effluvia.
Just in the background, there's a dude hacking up a lung back there, and especially in today's time, like in what we're dealing with currently in the world, you're just cringing. You're like, oh my god.
Yeah, not one of them was wearing a mask. It was just there's no social distancing whatsoever.
Get out of there, Roy.
And the amount of sweat they've slathered on these guys. You feel it just watching it.
I'm starting to think that wasn't slathered.
It was all real.
I'm starting to think that just the humid conditions, you can see the humidity hanging in the air in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's just everyone is covered in sweat all the time.
And each man obviously wants to get out of there. We see them trying to sell their possessions, whatever meager things they have left, trying to get enough money to get a ticket out, but none of them can manage it.
Yeah, every job there is a dead-end job. Mm-hmm. And it could mean your death as well. We see, we get exposed to a scene where one of them is trying to help put an oil pipeline in.
Right.
And there's like 15 guys trying to lift this giant oil pipeline into place, and it goes horribly wrong, and it ends up crushing a dude, and they just drag him out and start over again.
Right.
Like every job is going to pay you nothing, and you could die doing it. Mm-hmm. So there's no future for anyone there.
Right. This oil company is obviously intended to be an omnipresent and colonial almost presence that cares nothing for the populace, only for their profits. And they're just eating them up and chewing them out.
And I've seen this film compared to Herzog's Aguirre, The Wrath of God as well. And I think you get a very good sense of comparison there, where you can start to see where man comes into nature and takes and takes and takes, and everyone who's there in their way, so including the people who are native of this land, basically are just in the way. And it doesn't matter what happens to them as long as we get our money from what we're trying to do.
I think that was what compelled me to the film, because despite going in, I wasn't that enthused with the idea. The way they tell the story and the characterization of everyone, it really pulls you into this space where they're relating this theme to you.
And it has a slower pace, especially at the beginning. I think a lot of viewers who prefer their movies more fast-paced and let's get to the point and truncated might find that a little bit challenging at first. But, I mean, it's the quintessential 70s movie where they took their time to tell the story. And I think even those people who maybe, don't like a slower story are going to get sucked in if they give it a chance.
Yeah, this film has two very different tones. I think from the opening that we see, where we're getting to know these characters, you're starting to wonder, okay, where are we going to get to? I read the blurb on the back of the movie.
Yeah.
Where are we getting to?
When do we get to the fireworks factory?
Yeah. When do trucks start blowing up? When does Michael Bay take over? I want to know. And it takes a little bit, but I feel that the payoffs that we get throughout the film and towards as you start to get to the real suspense, those payoffs wouldn't be there if we didn't take the time to set up these characters.
Exactly.
You really need that time spent.
The build up to pay off, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and this village, to me, I mean, it's purgatory. I think the name of the village is Porvenir.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is purgatory for these characters.
That's a perfect description of what
this is. They're paying for their sins, some greater than others, but they're all here awaiting judgment. And when this oil fire happens, and the company is like, "Hey, We need men to drive these trucks. The only explosives nearby are sweating nitroglycerin because they've been improperly stored for decades, probably. They can't chopper them to the site because the chopper would just too much vibrations. It would blow it up. So each man goes through and does a test where they drive the trucks, and whoever passed gets the job.
They're basically having them drive over like rough terrain and seeing if they know how to handle a truck,
Which Roy Scheider, he's a driver. He does it, winningly. He's the best one.
Right.
But to me, this is basically, it's their chance at redemption. This is their test.
It's their ticket
to get out of purgatory.
Right. It's their chance out, their chance to get back to a normal life. Another shot to do everything over again.
Yes. And even one of the names of the trucks that they paint on it is Lazaro or Lazarus. They're going to rise from the dead.
Right. Interesting. I did not.
Right.
I didn't put those two together.
Yeah. And the other truck's name is Sorcerer, hence the title Sorcerer.
And speaking of those trucks, they almost feel like a character in the film themselves.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
get to see them build them from pretty much scratch. They take scraps from different vehicles and kind of amalgam these awesome-looking trucks to drive.
So, and I was thinking this too, that where I haven't seen Wages of Fear yet, but I've seen some comparisons. I've seen people talk about how in Wages of Fear they're given 2 brand new trucks.
Mm-hmm.
But this feels like every bit of their redemption is going to have to be built by them.
Right.
And when they're doing such a dangerous job,
it's all on them. There's no
you can't blame the
else.
truck. Like, you can't blame anything else but your handiwork.
Mm-hmm.
You see them, there's a great little montage of them putting things together on the truck, like welding better pieces on and fine-tuning the engine and the transmission, and like showing these. It's mostly Scanlon that seems to really know what he's doing.
Sure.
But some of the others, they're not.
They've learned some things working for the oil company. About
they're
mechanics
not,
and stuff.
They kind of know what they're doing. But you really get that sense of ownership of what they're doing. And then you also feel like, how the hell are you going to take these 2 pieces of shit across 200 miles of jungle terrain and carry sweating nitroglycerin without blowing up?
Yeah. And the trucks, especially Sorcerer, I mean, they look like animals or demons. Mm-hmm. Like the grill looks like broken teeth. The headlamps look like eyes. There's these kind of strange ridges on the hood, like scoops that look like a spine. So they look like living, breathing creatures.
They're totally boss, man. I want a scale model of one of these so bad.
That would be awesome.
And did you notice how the truck Sorcerer looks a lot like that carved demon face that we see at the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I do now.
I picked up on that at first because it felt very much like The Exorcist, which is another Friedkin film.
Right.
He opens it on that edifice.
Mm-hmm. And as soon as they take off on their journey, they pass by that stone carving.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now I want to go back and rewatch it because I don't think I caught that.
Yeah.
So to chain us back to the start, Michael, you and I both had this feeling of, how can it be interesting to watch them drive trucks? So when we get to that part in the movie, holy crap, like the tension.
It's white-knuckled.
Is insane.
So we get to this absolutely fantastic scene that, when you also read about the behind-the-scenes part of it, is probably the quintessential moment that you might see if you check out a trailer for this film.
Mm-hmm.
They come to this bridge that is a rope bridge that is suspended over a river. And it looks wide enough that the truck could go on it, but there's like missing planks everywhere. It looks like if you step on it wrong, it's going to just completely crash down.
Yeah, think of the rope bridge from Temple of Doom.
Yeah,
a little bit wider.
Yeah.
Just oh my god.
And more rickety.
Like the whole time. How did they shoot this even?
So that's actually pretty fun. I did a little research on this. So they had a river that they were going to construct this bridge over top of, and they put hydraulic system into the bridge so they could control it, move the bridge up and down, and really give you the simulation of like the bridge being rickety. And the local officials in the town told them that the waterway would be perfect. It's going to look great. It's always running well. Well, it didn't. There was a drought, and it actually completely dried up. The river did.
Wow.
So they'd already spent, I want to say it cost like over $1 million to build this special effect bridge.
Right, all these hydraulics and stuff, right?
And so we're sitting here like in today thinking like $1 million isn't really that big a deal.
For a big picture, no.
Yeah, but for this, like this is your big moment right here. You've got to nail this.
Mm-hmm.
So they end up like doing location scouts and everything and end up moving this to a place in Mexico now that supposedly has similar look to the river. So they end up just breaking down this huge thing they've already built, moving it to Mexico, putting it in. So the river works, okay, but now this scene is pouring rain. And you're not on a soundstage, so you cannot pump this through like sprinkler system or anything. Mm-hmm. So what they actually did was they took the river and put a sewage pump in the river and blew all the river water everywhere to simulate. And this storm feels so real, though.
It looks so dangerous.
The
truck is teetering from one side to you think any moment it's just going to go right into the water.
Right, like, and they're trying to drive it and not drop the clutch, and like trying to maneuver their way over these broken planks where all of a sudden the tire will just drop in and you're like, okay, this is it.
Yeah, that's it.
This is where they blow up.
I think I said it on Hard Boiled too, but when you make a film and it's actually a dangerous production, some of that translates into the final picture, and I think that's very much at play here.
Oh,
too.
for sure.
And most of the actors did their own work for this. So they didn't really use stunt drivers for this because Friedkin was so insistent on close-up shots. Mm-hmm. He refused to use any motion backgrounds. He wanted it to feel real. He wanted you to feel like you were in these trucks with these guys.
Oh, he nailed it.
Yeah,
he completely nails it.
He got it.
Yeah. So, like, Scheider talks about being on set that he got good at driving because he didn't want to die. Like
that's a good motivator.
He became this character because these stunts were so dangerous, and really, they didn't have any business doing these. Like they
were part of the whole, new Hollywood movement. Directors were given so much power.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of oversight.
But because of that, though, that kind of bleeds into the behind-the-scenes drama of this film, which, God, there is a shitload of.
It's a freaking production. Of course there is.
It is. Like, if you're familiar with any other things Friedkin's known for, like in The Exorcist, firing a gun on set, not telling anybody, so everybody looks scared shitless because somebody just fired a gun on set.
Yeah, slapping actors to get the appropriate reaction that he wants.
Yeah, so things that we can all agree on are like, dude, not cool.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't do that. But the same thing happened here, in situations where it's not just a blank going off on a set. It's legitimately, if you mess this up, you dead, kind of a thing. Thankfully, they weren't actually hauling real nitroglycerin, so they didn't have that to deal with. But
at least they weren't that dedicated to real.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't put it past Friedkin at all to be like, hey, I need a guy that can get me 6 cases of sweating nitroglycerin.
Drive like you mean it.
Exactly. So you had a lot of discord between the actors and Friedkin and a lot of the people on set and Friedkin just being so demanding of wanting to make sure that this is authentic and feels real. But yeah, that's kind of how that scene came about where you're watching
crazy this
intense edge of your seat thing. Like I watched this at 9:00 in the morning, so I was sitting there with my coffee. And that's a great way to wake up, man. I'm expecting just kind of a slow burn 70s film, and that's not at all what I got.
No. And you notice how, because before they get to that bridge scene, they come to a fork in the road.
Right.
And they don't know which way to go.
Yeah. They each take a different path.
They each take a different path, but that path takes them both to that bridge.
Yeah, there was no way around it.
Which sort of ties into the theme of fate that Friedkin had for this movie, because that's one of the reasons he called it Sorcerer. Well, he said he also called it Sorcerer to cash in on The Exorcist. But he said that the sorcerer is an evil wizard, and in this case, the evil wizard is fate. The fact that somebody can walk out their front door and a hurricane can take them away, an earthquake or something falling through the roof, and the idea that we don't really have control over our own fates, neither our births nor our deaths, it's something that has haunted me since I was intelligent enough to contemplate something like it. So
damn, Friedkin.
Right. Yeah.
That's pretty deep.
So is it fate? I mean, they're fated to both go to this bridge. Mm-hmm. They've all been fated to be in this village and be in this position where they have to pay penance and try to get out of purgatory. Do they have any chance of getting out?
And there's no easy way out of this.
Right.
There's no one didn't choose an easier path. So I think that what we kind of get to as well. So Friedkin apparently became good friends with the writer of this film, which was Waylon Green. Waylon Green also did The Wild Bunch.
Ah, classic.
Mm-hmm. So he's, no stranger to awesome action.
And
pictures.
demanding totalitarian dictator-like directors.
Oh, you're not saying that about Peck and Paw, are you?
Oh, I wouldn't say
Sure.
that.
But they kind of grew to have, I want to say, like a love affair with each other, not romantically at all, but just infatuated with the way, with the way each other viewed the world, admired each other. Green gave Friedkin 100 Years of Solitude to read, and Friedkin said that completely changed his life, kind of changed the way he viewed life and everything. So I'm not really sure how that plays into what we were just talking about, but
interesting context for everything.
Sure.
Yeah, to give you a sense of kind of to tie in there with what Jason's saying about that you don't have control over your own fate.
But then again, they chose the path they took. They chose to be criminals. They chose to kill people or swindle people.
You're not trying to say, Jason, that there are consequences to our actions?
I think Friedkin is.
Okay, well, you're not. You're not
I'm
going
not.
as far as
I'm
to
not
say
saying
there's
that.
consequences.
No.
to
I
our
can read that
actions.
in the film. And I think that idea of fate too kind of gets into the tension because it really feels like at any moment one of them could die. You never feel like it's a safe thing where they're all going to make it to the end.
That's also where the casting comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a lot of American actors who have it in their contract that they don't die.
Right.
So there's mystery. Yeah, exactly. You're on the edge of your seat. You don't know who's going to make it.
And so I'm a big devotee of Hitchcock. I think we all love his films. Mm-hmm. And he had that whole idea of when you talk about tension, it's the time bomb under the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's down there. The audience knows it's there, but the cast don't know when it's going to blow up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this film nails that perfectly to a T.
I think that leads into something that I've been dying to talk about this movie.
Yeah.
Is we all think someone's dying on that bridge.
Right.
Yes.
And when there comes a point where one of their drivers can't see out of the window due to the torrential downpour, so his co-pilot gets out to guide him and friggin' falls through one of the horrible planks on the bridge.
Yes. Oh my God, this part.
And the driver is now leaning out saying, I can't see you. Where are you? And the dude's laying under the truck.
Right. You think he's getting crushed.
The truck is inching closer and closer.
There's this animal of a truck's about to devour him.
And the driver can't see. He can't hear. He's lost visual on his guide. And you're waiting that, okay, this dude isn't going to get blown up by nitroglycerin. He's going to get run over by the damn truck.
Right.
What a horrible way to go. And that builds you up to this. And I'm sitting there going, he's going to die right here. But he doesn't.
Nope.
He does not. He makes it out, and they make it across this bridge. Both parties do. So this is where I hope that everybody's watched this film before you're listening to this podcast. Because I just spoiled it.
I think it will become clear, but it should just be a blanket thing. If it's our film for discussion, we are going to get into spoiler territory.
Yeah, we're going to have to.
So please watch it beforehand if you're curious.
So that leads me into what I really, really want to talk about is they make it through this. Mm-hmm. We get to this other scene where they have to blow up a tree using some of the nitroglycerin because the tree is too big. They can't cross it. There's no way across. Okay, we can breathe a sigh of relief now.
Yep.
They've made it.
Kasim's an explosive expert, so he can coordinate the tree explosion.
And one quick point to that, Kasim knows what to do. Each at some point, each character uses their skill set from the profession that got them in trouble, that got them to this purgatory in the first place. Kasim knows about improvised explosives, so he rigs up this device, the sticks and twine and everything to smash the rock onto nitroglycerin to blow up the tree. Of course, Roy Scheider's character Scanlon, he knows how to drive. He knows about
Expert
vehicles. Driver. Right. The Frenchman, whose name escapes me for the moment.
Victor Manzan. They
Thank
also
you,
call him
Manzan.
Serrano. Once they get to Porvenir, some of them pick up nicknames.
Right, exactly. The better hide from the people who are after them. Right, Manzan, he uses his negotiating skills to get higher wages for this endeavor.
He's kind of the heart of the group in a way.
Right. And Nilo, the assassin we see at the beginning, well, he failed the driving test. He wasn't one of the original drivers. The driver who got chosen was an old German called Marquez. But Marquez doesn't show up when they're all getting together to take off in the trucks. And they're like, where's Marquez? Where's he at? They go to check on him. He's dead. And Nilo's just standing there waiting like, yeah, I killed him.
Who else are you going to pick, man?
Right.
Yeah, I got to go now.
And Scheider's like, we need another driver. No, we have to go. Kasim's upset because he was friendly with the old German. But,
right.
Scheider talks him down. We need a driver. Let's go.
And that's a fascinating subplot, too, because you feel like the whole time he's there for one of them, but you don't really know what's going on.
Like you think, is he hunting down Roy Scheider? What's going on? Yeah.
And they're all looking over their shoulder.
Oh, yeah.
And even Nilo uses his skills. Like he pulls a gun out later on, to help out.
But so they get through the tree.
Right. They get through the tree. Tons more suspense. We're driving along, and Serrano is just telling a story about his wife to his passenger. Which one was it?
Kasim.
To Kasim. Telling a story about his wife. Tire blows out. Boom. Truck explodes.
Holy crap.
No warning whatsoever.
None. And it's something so mundane that takes them out. They've made it through this whole jungle, man, of horrible obstacles that they expect to die at any second. The tire blows out.
Yeah, they're in the home stretch. And the tire
they had no
out.
control.
A fate, again. Is it fate? Is there no way out of this purgatory? Is there nothing they can do to redeem their sins?
And that scene was such a gut punch, man.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, there were no punches pulled on that either. It's just, and it didn't build up. You're thinking like, oh, they got it. They made it. They're going to make it out of here. And because also you expect your heroes to usually live in a film.
Heroes in parentheses.
Yeah.
Big parentheses.
Yeah. You're expecting somebody to make it out. And it's just so quick.
Yeah,
and
done. It's over.
I think you were telling me that in Wages of Fear, though, it's shot a little different.
Mm-hmm. It's this wide shot. You're seeing two characters in the foreground. They're like taking a break from the truck. They're looking off in the distance where the other truck's driving, and you just see it in the distance. Poof, big explosion goes off, and then you hear it. And you don't know how it happened.
Yeah.
Still
effective.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But there's something about this and the way they're lulling you into this story about this guy's going to get back to his wife.
Sure. As soon as they start to relax and celebrate a little bit, bam.
Yep. Fate takes over. Yeah. There it is. So eventually we're going to see some more things ensue, but we really only have one person who, quote unquote, makes it out.
Mm-hmm.
And Dustin, you had mentioned this about this fever dream that kind of takes over Scanlan.
Right, so kind of toward the very end of their journey, Scanlan's sort of the only one left. He and Nilo kind of run afoul of some guerrilla fighters. There's a big shootout. The truck gets messed up. Nilo is fatally wounded. And they get into this area that's, would you guys describe it as like a badland almost?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like little rock spires and it's barren.
And as he's going through there, he just starts to lose it. And it starts to flash to some of the stuff from the past, some of the things that happened earlier, and it feels very much like it could have come right out of The Exorcist, like this complete horror moment where he is just losing his mind.
He's hung up on this horrendous car crash that killed all of his... I mean, he was the driver, and this horrendous car crash killed all of his friends, or his business acquaintances.
His cohorts.
Yeah, if they may not have been friends, but they die horribly. And for not being like a gory film, and not taking the normal sense of gore of what we're used to in horror films, those are disturbing.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They felt real. Those felt like a car crash that you came up on.
Right. Again, that documentary influence.
Yeah, God. I mean, those were harder to look at than some of the stuff that, we're used to in horror films.
And if we're talking about fate, it seems like that's part of what it is. Like, it's his fate to always kind of survive through. So it seems to this point. He survived the initial car crash. He survived this trip through the jungle, and you can tell it destroys him. It weighs on him.
And along the way, it's been a long time since I've seen this, so it was great rewatching it. But after Roy Scheider and Nilo pass the bridge, and they know that Manzan and Kasim are behind them, Scanlan is celebrating.
Yeah.
He's saying they're never going to make it.
Right.
We get double shares. He keeps saying double shares. We get more money because they're not going to make it. He doesn't care about these people. He hasn't learned his lesson. He only cares about the money to get to where he wants to be.
Right. And we kind of see that at the end of the film.
Right.
So
he gets all the shares.
He does get all the shares, but now I start to question, did he make it?
I don't know.
Our final scene of the film, we see Scanlon is now delivered the truck.
Mm-hmm.
He's got his money.
He's all cleaned up. We're in the nice.
He walks it the last little ways.
Yeah, because
the last 2 miles he has to walk it.
He just wants to walk it
Crazy.
to get it there.
Well, the truck dies.
Yeah, exactly. But he's all cleaned up now. He's sitting in a bar, much like he was at the beginning of the film, but he's in a much different state now.
Mm-hmm. Got a passport, lots of money.
There's a plane waiting on him to go, and he asks, do I have time? Will they hold the plane for me? And they tell him, well, yeah, for you.
Mm-hmm.
They'll wait all day.
Richest people now in the country.
Yeah, you're everything now. And he ends up having a dance with a native lady at the bar.
Who was kind of sweet on Manzan's character right at the start of the film.
Right. Manzan was really kind to her and stuff.
And you kind of see the misfortune of the native people that are there, and that even though now they're surrounded by someone with so much money, they still have nothing.
Right.
But we see the same hitman from the beginning now get out of a taxi, right?
It's Scanlon's friend who had sent him down to South America to begin with.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. See,
Right.
I always got those two mixed up.
The hitmen with him have white shoes on, which was something Nilo did in his prologue scene.
Oh, yeah.
I
Right.
noticed that.
I didn't
As
catch
if that's
that.
sort of like a symbol for hitmen in the film.
Right.
And so I got the feeling towards the end of this, like,
Well, let's wrap it up though. So these hitmen show up. You're seen from outside in the street.
Yeah, they're pulling away.
You see them go inside. The music's still playing, and then there's just a single gunshot, and that's where we kind of leave off.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know.
It's pretty safe to assume he's dead.
Yeah.
Right. Like, to me, my feeling is sort of they've done these terrible things. They end up in this awful place, and as you go along with them, you really start to root for them and cheer for them. You love them. You want them to succeed.
Right.
And so at the end, you're celebrating with Scanlon that he's done this. And then suddenly it kind of pans back out, and you're back to reality. No, he did this terrible thing. He shot a guy. He killed all these people.
He's still a shitbag.
There was a hit placed on him by the mafia, and all of that just catches up to him finally.
And he had the opportunity to change, to learn his lesson.
Even in that last moment, if he had gone on to the plane, he might have missed those people.
Right. Yeah.
Never take a moment to celebrate. That's the lesson to be learned here.
So there are some great behind-the-scenes, fun little tidbits from this film that are absolutely bonkers. Kind of towards the beginning in the vignettes that we're seeing, there was a stuntman injured heavily in the blast of the Palestinian terrorists that blow up a building.
That scene was very real.
The reason that is so real is because, one, the stuntman stood too close. He was in charge of controlling the explosion. Like, he was the one who was going to push the trigger, and so he can control the blast and know where to be. He stood too close, got horribly injured. So Friedkin wanted to reset. So they reset, and within an hour, I think it was what I've read, that they reset it so quick, and they shot again. Like, didn't matter that the dude just horribly got injured. Like, we're shooting this again.
We got a movie to make, damn it.
Well, because of the time and the turmoil politically there was an actual bombing, like 4 streets over or something.
Wow.
So Friedkin grabbed up his camera crew and started shooting. And so a lot of that footage...
All that chaos and people running around.
Yeah,
and
that is real. That is from an actual bombing terrorist attack. So you still get that documentary feeling.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, crazy stuff like that going on. When we get to our big scene where they have to use the nitroglycerin, that scene is supposed to show you how powerful this nitroglycerin is, because before we haven't seen it yet.
Right.
We haven't really seen...
We're told it'll wipe them out if it sets off, but...
Right. We see one drop kind of make a firecracker explosion on the ground.
But that's really all we see. And
Sure.
we haven't really committed yet to how dangerous this is.
No, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So we get to this giant tree that they can't go anywhere. There's no other paths. They have to go through this tree. They tried hacking it with machetes, but it's just pointless.
There's nowhere to drive around, yeah.
So they finally get the idea. They're going to use some of the nitroglycerin and blow up this tree. So they set up this elaborate little mousetrap looking thing to drop a rock, and they're going to run. So when this tree explodes, it is massive. Like, this is a great explosion for film.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's turned into toothpicks, too.
Yeah, it's just one of the... it's a great explosion. So apparently, the special effects coordinator did this shot for them, and it just didn't look good. It didn't really blow up the way Friedkin felt it should, that it should show more like explosion. We really need to feel what this is going to feel like.
It wasn't dangerous enough.
Yeah, it wasn't violent enough.
Exactly. So what they ended up doing is Friedkin ended up calling back home to New York and hiring an arsonist. And an actual arsonist that has been known to burn buildings down for people, get involved in these insurance scams and whatnot. So he ends up bringing this arsonist down to Central America.
It's insane.
And gives the dude all the stuff he needs. And voila, you get this great explosion.
Oh, wow. That is crazy.
That's completely off the rails. So I was trying to find more information about who this arsonist actually was.
Right.
But it's pretty low down.
Yeah, he probably didn't want too much exposure for that.
Yeah, no.
Makes sense.
So
it's like, Bill, can you pay me in cash?
And it sounds like that's probably how it went. I mean, but this explosion, man, is glorious.
Oh, yeah, it's very impressive.
So, Jason, obviously your film, I'm pretty sure you liked it.
Oh, love it. Love it even more this time.
But Dustin, what do you think?
Well, first, Jason, if you had to give it the old letterboxed 5-star rating, where does this sit for you?
Oh, wait a minute. We would be remiss if we did not talk about the score to this film.
Okay, fair enough.
By Tangerine Dream.
Yeah.
Excellent score.
It is so predictive of the type of score that would be omnipresent in the 80s. Mm-hmm. That electronic synthesizer, new wavy.
Now we call it synthwave.
Synthwave, right. That's what we call it now. But it was so ahead of its time, and it was so effective. It's almost incongruent with what we're seeing with that documentary style and that, just the violence and the sweat and the grime, because you associate those sounds with sleek, futuristic type visuals, but it works.
Oh, yeah. It's a great score.
It's amazing.
Super cool.
But if I had to rate this, it's a 5. It's a solid 5 for me.
It's hard to get from Jason. Hard to get a 5.
It is, but it's just so good.
Okay.
How about you, Dustin? What do you think?
Like I said, I'm easy on my 5s if you can wow me. So this absolutely is far and away a 5 for me.
Nice.
I loved it.
Awesome.
It's never a film I would have just walked over and picked up or saw
absolutely,
on Netflix and said, hey, I'm going to watch this. Even knowing that Friedkin directed, I love The Exorcist, but thoroughly impressed, thoroughly surprised.
I'm with you guys. I'm a solid 5
All right.
on this
Whoa,
one.
3 5s.
And I think what I love so much, this is what I love about this movie club. This is why I want to do this.
Right, it's probably something you never would have watched, like Dustin said.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
would have
Sorcerer.
never seen this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And because your taste led you down that road at some point, you watched it. And
I love the 70s.
And knew it was... You still think you're in the 70s, but you knew that this movie was great and that not enough people are really talking about it.
Right.
Not enough people are watching it.
Yeah, this one really, it needs more love. What was, Jason, the story you told me about when this came out as far as a theatrical thing and its performance?
Right.
What was that?
Well, there were a couple of factors that kept this from being the huge hit that it was.
There was some little movie that came out at the same time.
Yeah, like a month before, something called Star Wars opened.
That seems like...
It's a cult movie. It was bigger back then.
Yeah, probably not very many people are into it now.
I can't imagine having this film, and that's what you have to follow up in
Right,
theaters.
because the 70s cinema was very reflective of the times. There was so much political turmoil.
And all of that is in Sorcerer.
Yeah, it's all in Sorcerer. Yeah, I mean, the recession was terrible. People didn't have jobs. There were gas lines just to fuel your car. It was just a horrible, horrible, stressful time. And that's reflected in movies like Sorcerer. But after Star Wars, everyone they weren't ready to go back to reality.
Right. You wanted those spectacles, the big space opera.
Exactly. They wanted that escapism.
Mm-hmm.
So audiences were not in the mood for Sorcerer. And they were also confused by the title because, a lot of people thought it was a sequel to The Exorcist or something. So, yeah, Star Wars.
Nobody watches that anymore.
Well, Jason, amazing pick.
Thank
Glad
you.
to have watched it. Please go out and find this film and watch it if you've not seen it.
It is on Blu-ray.
And is also, I rented it through, rented it through Fandango.
Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to avoid Amazon for, because Amazon. But yeah, Fandango, it was only like $3.
That's still
That's
worth
it.
That was a movie rental back in the day, $3,
And that's another thing we'd like to try to do for all listeners is kind of let you know where you can find these films, so you don't have to search as much as we do. And we're going to try to keep it to where there's not like a big cost investment, of being able to watch these because they're great movies.
I don't think Dustin's agreed to this yet.
Well, everyone will learn I'm the collector. I love to pick up Blu-rays. I have a massive library. I'm building a video store, basically.
But we'll try to find a way for you to see it, if you don't want to invest in the Blu-ray like Dustin does with everything.
But there is a blue if you want it. I don't have the blue.
Oh,
unfortunately.
that's a half a shot.
I have the blue.
Oh,
thank you, Jason.
There you go.
Well, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I was a little worried there, but
I don't know why, man.
I knew your impeccable taste would come through in the end.
It was such a great film.
It's not for everybody, though. It's a different era.
But so good.
If you have seen it, write in. Tell us what you think. genreexposure@gmail.com. Hopefully, once we get rolling with these, we can actually have some input from people we can read on air.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We'll get to that at some point.
Tweet us. Is that how you say it?
Tweet us, message us, contact us any which way you can.
On the internets.
Yeah, on the interwebs.
On the webs.
So, Dustin, next week is your pick?
Right, next week is my pick.
You're switching it up a little bit. What are we watching?
Right, well, we've talked about how we're all kind of rooted in horror, and yet our first two films haven't been horror. So I think that we need to fix that, and also, this is going to come a little out of order. It's taken some time to build up and get a podcast going, but January is Giallo January.
Okay.
It's a thing a lot of people have started online. You spend the month celebrating Giallo films, watching what you can.
What are Giallo films, Dustin?
We will talk about that next time.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to bury
Tune in next time to find out what Giallo is.
I don't want to bury the
cliffhanger.
I don't want to bury the lead too much, but next time we're going to be checking out Luigi Bazzoni's The Fifth Chord from 1971.
Very cool.
Fun.
So look forward to that and the wild, wonderful world of Giallo films.
Excellent.
Can't wait.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye, everybody.